For many people, getting a good night's sleep isn't easy, and for me, it wasn't either. There was a long time when I struggled with insomnia. If something made me sad, stressed at work, even too happy, or after watching an intense movie, my mind would keep running, and I just couldn't sleep. I tried seeing doctors, taking sleeping pills, but nothing really worked. Then, I discovered Buddhist teaching. They helped me live with more peace, and slowly, I began to sleep deeply again. That's why I want to share this video with you.
Before you close your eyes tonight, let me share something that might help you truly fall asleep, not just drift off, but rest deeply, with a mind at ease. Imagine lying there, and instead of holding on tightly to every thought, every opinion, you simply let go. The grip softens, and in that spaciousness, something beautiful appears, a humility that feels gentle, not small. You realize you don't need to be right all the time. You no longer define yourself by what you believe or by the arguments you can win. Saying, "I don't know," no longer feels like weakness, it feels like freedom. You can learn without feeling the need to defend yourself. You can listen without secretly waiting for your turn to speak, because you're no longer guarding a fortress. Instead, you're opening a window, and when you look through that window, you see the truth. Nothing exists in isolation. That might sound cold, but it's actually warm, woven together with the threads of connection. If you are not separate, then you are always connected. Every thought you have has been shaped by the culture you live in. Every feeling has been molded by your relationships. Every part of you has been formed by causes you didn't choose, yet now, with awareness, with care, with wise action, you can gently influence them. This is the doorway to compassion. When you see yourself as a process, constantly changing, you start to see others that way too. That person who hurt you, they are also shaped by causes. That person who frustrates you, they are not fixed in stone, they are a moving stream. This doesn't mean you excuse harm. It means you stop freezing people in place in your mind. You make space for change, for them, and for yourself. Shunyata, emptiness, teaches you to release craving, not by suppressing it, but by seeing it clearly. You desire something because you think it will make you real, safe, complete, but if the self that craves is not solid, then no object of craving can ever complete it. And strangely, that's a relief. You can still enjoy things. You can still feel desire. But your happiness is no longer fragile, no longer dependent on getting exactly what you want. Contentment arises, not because life is perfect, but because you've stopped grasping at perfection. You rest in what is open, shifting, alive. Even your spiritual path is not an exception. Emptiness reminds you, don't cling to progress. Don't make enlightenment another mask to wear. You're not becoming someone else, you're remembering that you were never separate to begin with. Each insight is like a reflection in an endless sky, beautiful, but untouchable, and with that knowing comes a simplicity that can't be faked. You move through life with less resistance. You no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer need to hold grudges, chase validation, or build a personality designed to impress. You just breathe, you just show up, and when the old masks fall away, what's left? Not nothing. Clarity, peace, openness, a presence that can hold anything without collapsing. This is not an idea, it's a direct seeing. Something you feel deep in your bones. The heavy self-image lightens. And with that lightness, you find freedom. You begin to choose from stillness, not from fear. You connect with others without losing yourself. You feel whole, not because you are finished, but because you've stopped pretending to be solid. Even your thoughts change in this space. They are no longer problems to solve, they are passing events. Conditioned and temporary, When you see them as empty, you stop wrestling with them. They arise, they pass, the cycle of rumination breaks. Energy returns, and even emotions, seen through this lens, become softer. Sadness no longer defines you. Anger no longer owns you. And in that quiet understanding, sleep comes easier. Joy is not something you have to hold on to with clenched fists. You don't need to trap it, or lock it away, afraid it might slip through your fingers. Just like a wave rolling in from the vast sea, every feeling rises and falls, empty of permanence, yet full of life and experience. And here's the thing, you are not the wave. You are the entire ocean that holds it. When you truly see this, attachment begins to loosen, not by force, not by pushing yourself to let go, but simply through understanding. The things you once grasped at so tightly, status, security, approval, they lose their power over you when you realize they too are empty, shifting, impermanent. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. You still care deeply, but your care is no longer tangled with desperation. And when life falls apart, as it inevitably does from time to time, you don't fall apart with it. You feel the sting of pain. You honor the loss, but you don't lose yourself, because the self was never something you could own. It was always an unfolding, always in motion. This is where true resilience is born, not from building heavy armor, but from spaciousness in your heart. Shunyata also protects you from spiritual pride. It gently reminds you that this path isn't about becoming special, it's about dissolving what was never true. Even the ego that longs to be awakened, recognized, admired, that too is empty. You can smile at it, you can bow to it, but you no longer believe its voice. And in that moment, real humility takes root, the kind that comes not from shame, but from wonder. You no longer feel the need to stand out. You just show up, fully present, empty of self-importance, yet overflowing with presence. And then a question might arise: if everything is empty, where does meaning come from? The answer is soft, simple. It arises moment by moment, through connection, through intention, through love. It's not fixed, but alive. You don't chase it, you create it through where you place your attention, through the choices you make, through your willingness to meet life without clutching at it. This is the freedom that emptiness offers, not detachment, but depth, not apathy, but intimacy. You see more clearly because you cling less. You love more freely because you grasp less. You suffer less because you resist less. Shunyata is not a concept to be mastered, it's a space to step into. A gentle loosening, a return to the fluid nature of everything, including you. And when you allow yourself to dissolve into that spaciousness, not to disappear, but to become real, you may find a peace that doesn't rely on anything at all. A clarity that can hold everything. A wholeness that needs no proof. Nothing missing, nothing extra. You are already home, because the one who was searching was never separate from the very space they sought. And that space, open, kind, ungraspable, is always here, waiting without waiting, empty, full, and free. When the heavy burden of trying to hold everything together begins to drop from your shoulders, and you're no longer trying to mold yourself into something solid just to feel safe. What rises is not the emptiness you once feared. What rises is softness, an openness that feels like truth. But it's not the kind of truth that crushes or overwhelms you. It's the kind of truth that feels familiar, as if you've always known it but never had the words. In that quiet return, you might notice something tender surfacing. Not weakness, but a part of you that never had the chance to be truly seen. The one who once hoped without hesitation. The one who carried shame before they even knew how to speak. The one who learned to hide in order to feel safe. That part was never gone. It has been waiting for the moment you could meet it without fear. Coming back to yourself can feel like stepping through a quiet doorway into a familiar, yet long-forgotten room. It's not about controlling what you find there. It's not about rushing to patch every crack or mend every scar. It begins with something simpler, gentler, with care. Tending to the inner child is not a journey backward to rewrite the past. It's about meeting yourself now, in the life you have today, in ways you couldn't before. It's about offering the kind of steady, loving presence your younger self should have had, but didn't. And this isn't a distant idea or a comforting daydream. It becomes something alive, like a soft voice inside, always there to meet you. In the yoga tradition, there's a teaching called Tathagata Gava, Buddha nature. The truth that within every being there is a core of clarity, compassion, and wisdom. It's not something you manufacture. It's what remains when you clear away the dust of fear, the weight of old habits, the tight grip of conditioning. Your worth was never conditional. Not when you were small. Not when you made mistakes. Not now. This is the meeting point, where caring for the child inside touches the truth of Buddha nature. You're not just trying to soothe them. You're helping them remember their own reflection, untangled from the shadows. Most of us learn early how to shield ourselves. Maybe by staying silent so trouble would pass us by. Maybe by being endlessly helpful in hopes of being loved. Maybe by becoming invisible so no one could find a way to hurt us. Those choices were wise in their time, they kept you safe. But if they remain unquestioned, they keep directing the course of your life long after their season has ended. To reparent gently is to stop condemning those old responses and start understanding them. It's learning to be the kind of adult your younger self needed. Not flawless, not always sure, but patient, kind, and willing to be present. It starts with noticing what stirs that child now. The sharpness of a voice. The ache of being overlooked. The familiar burn of rejection. These aren't signs of weakness. They're openings, moments to turn inward instead of away. When you feel small, ashamed, or unworthy, you may be brushing against an old memory. A time when love was withheld or replaced with pressure. The adult in you may try to brush it aside, explain it away, or bury it under distractions. But the child still waits to be seen. So you listen, not just with words, but with full, quiet attention. You ask, what is needed here? Sometimes it's comfort. Sometimes permission to be angry, to be afraid. Sometimes it's simply the safety of being noticed without being told to move on. Through the lens of Buddha nature, reparenting changes shape. You stop seeing the child as damaged. You begin to see that even in the hurt places, there is still light, that longing for connection, that sensitivity, that instinct for truth. These were never weaknesses. They were proof you were alive, aware, and still reaching toward life. Healing the inner child doesn't mean trying to turn them into someone else. It's about creating the space, the safety, for their natural innocence to come forward again. Not the fragile kind of innocence that turns away from truth, but the steady kind, the kind that sees things clearly, and chooses to love anyway. This kind of healing grows stronger with practice. And one of the simplest practices is an honest inner dialogue. Not forced affirmations, not sugar-coated phrases you don't believe, but real, genuine check-ins with yourself. You might close your eyes, take a slow breath, and speak directly to that part of you. I see you. I hear your fear. You are safe with me now. At first, it might feel awkward, even strange, but over time, it begins to feel natural, because you're not building something artificial. You're mending a connection that was once broken. Visualization can also help, not as an escape, but as a way to repair. You might imagine a place where the child in you can rest freely, speak openly, play without fear. A place untouched by judgment. And in that place, you see your adult self walking in, not to give orders, but to simply be there. It's not about erasing the past or pretending it never happened. It's about letting a new kind of memory take root, one that tells your body it is safe now. Your nervous system can learn this safety. It can learn that protection doesn't always come from tension. It can learn that support is possible, that comfort is real. And remember, the inner child lives more in the body than in your thoughts. Sometimes it speaks through a tight belly, a hunched back, a clenched jaw. Gentle reparenting means checking in with these signals, placing a hand over your heart, breathing deeper, letting your body know, we are not in danger. Consistency matters more than perfection here. The child inside doesn't need a flawless parent, it needs a reliable one. Someone who shows up, even after they've forgotten. Someone who stays, even when things get messy. The more you return to this relationship, the more trust takes root inside you. And trust changes everything. Some people fear that reparenting will make them soft, weak, or overly emotional. But the truth is, it builds resilience. Not the hard, brittle kind that stays silent through everything, but the flexible, living kind that knows how to rest, how to speak up, how to say no. When the child inside feels safe, the adult can walk through the world with more freedom. You react less, you cling less, you guard yourself less, because you no longer hand over your self-worth to other people. You meet your own needs with compassion. And from that place, your relationships shift. They become more honest, more grounded, more spacious. This way of seeing through Buddha nature also protects you from spiritual bypassing. You don't jump over the pain. You don't pretend the trauma never happened. But you also stop making it the center of your identity. You hold both truths in your hands. Yes, this happened, and it hurt. And also, this is not all of who I am. You can know pain and still remain pure. You can carry scars and still shine with wisdom. The inner child knew this, long before the world taught it otherwise. It was only through years of comparison and criticism that you began to doubt. The closer you stay to that part of yourself, the more your adult choices begin to follow truth, not fear. You stop chasing after validation. You stop performing your healing like it's a show for others to applaud. Instead, you begin living with a quiet kind of integrity, a life that feels safe from the inside out. The child within you doesn't need you to become someone else. It needs you to stop walking away from yourself. It needs your honesty far more than your achievements, your gentleness far more than your strength. And slowly, that part of you, the one that used to flinch, that used to disappear just to survive, begins to stand again, not in rebellion, not in rage, but in presence. You reclaim your voice, not to shout, but to speak with clarity. You reclaim your body, not to dominate it, but to live in it fully. You reclaim your boundaries, not as walls to punish, but as acts of care. This is the quiet revolution of reparenting. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or sudden transformations. It grows like steady warmth, a soft but unshakable voice that says, I'm not leaving. Buddha nature was never something to earn. It was something to remember. Every small act of care, every return to presence, every moment you pause and breathe, they all wipe away a little more of the dust, covering what was always there. You are not broken. Yes, you may be covered by pain, by old conditioning, by shame, by confusion, but none of that changes the truth underneath. And when the child inside you sees that you remember who they are, not just what happened to them, but who they really are beneath it all, they begin to return. They return with eyes that trust, with hands that reach out, with a quiet light that no longer asks for permission to shine. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new one. A story told from love, not from survival. And that makes all the difference. When care becomes steady, when the inner child is no longer left waiting, something shifts deep in your nervous system. You stop bracing for abandonment. You stop apologizing for having needs. You begin to rest, not just in your body, but in the unfolding rhythm of your life. There's less urgency to fix, to know, to arrive somewhere. And yet, from within this new calm, a deeper question appears. If healing is not about force, and if identity is not fixed, then how does change really happen? If you're not in control of everything, are you just at the mercy of chaos? This is where a wiser rhythm starts to reveal itself. Not chaos, not control, but something in between, interdependence, the middle way. This is the doorway into understanding dependent origination. Pratityasamutpada, the natural law that explains why things happen, and why you don't have to control every single piece in order to be free. Dependent origination isn't some abstract philosophy. It's the living pattern woven into your everyday life. It explains why you feel what you feel, why you react the way you do, why you suffer, and more importantly, how that suffering is never permanent, never truly personal. At its heart, this teaching shows that nothing appears on its own. Everything you call you is built from causes and conditions. Your habits, your emotions, your beliefs, each one shaped by something that came before. This isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's about dissolving shame, when you see clearly that your reactions are not personal defects, but echoes of earlier events. The lens you look through softens. You realize you're not defective, you're conditioned, and conditioning can change. The mind loves to make everything personal. Why am I like this? Becomes a kind of self-attack. But through the lens of dependent origination, that question changes. It becomes, what causes are at play here? That shift moves you from blame to understanding, from resistance to compassion, from trying to control, to learning how to observe. And in that shift, space opens. You react less quickly. You pause. You start to see the pattern. And slowly, you stop feeding it. This is where freedom begins. Not by crushing your habits, but by understanding their roots, and refusing to give them fuel. In daily life, it might look like this. You notice anger rising. It's not random. It has conditions. Maybe it starts with a feeling of being dismissed, which comes from an old wound, which began because, once upon a time, someone you loved didn't listen. When you trace it back like this, anger stops being your identity. It becomes a process. And when it's a process, you can meet it with wisdom, instead of shame. Trusting the process doesn't mean letting every impulse run wild. It means seeing that everything has a story, and giving yourself the time to read it. That takes away the urgency. It lets you respond with care. It's not passivity. It's deep engagement without force. You start to see how your surroundings, your routines, your relationships, are constantly shaping your thoughts and feelings. And that awareness lets you make changes at the level of causes, instead of endlessly wrestling with the effects. That is real freedom. The real transformation is moving from control to trust. Control says, if I hold on tightly enough, nothing will fall apart. But trust knows, even if things do fall apart, you will meet them with courage. This way of seeing changes how you see others too. When someone's actions hurt you, you pause before condemning. You start to see their behavior as the outcome of their own conditioning. That doesn't excuse the harm, but it brings clarity. It helps you hold boundaries without hatred. It helps you speak truth without the need to punish. Because so often, conflict isn't about the moment itself. It's about the whole chain of reactions underneath. One word sparks a fear. That fear triggers a defense. That defense fuels more fear. And the spiral goes on. But if even one person sees the chain and steps out of it, the cycle begins to dissolve. That's how change happens. One insight at a time. One pause at a time. One small choice to respond differently. And the beauty is, dependent origination works both ways. Just as pain can grow from small causes, so can freedom. A single kind word can end a long silence. One mindful breath can interrupt a flood of anxiety. These aren't cliches. They're real shifts in the web of conditions that shape your life. And when you truly understand this law, you make peace with the unknown. You stop expecting life to move in neat, straight lines. You know everything is moving, changing, interwoven. So when life doesn't go as planned, you don't panic. You adjust. You listen. You trust that something else might unfold. Something unseen, but never random. This kind of trust isn't passive. It's steady. It holds you when things fall apart. It gives you courage when clarity hasn't yet arrived. It teaches you to sit with the tension of not knowing, and still act with care. If what we've shared today has touched something in you, maybe a quiet place you'd forgotten, or a truth you've always known deep down, then let's keep walking this path together. Every week here on Daily Dharma Wisdom, we explore teachings that are not just ideas to think about, but seeds you can plant in the soil of your own life. If you felt a moment of stillness, a little more space to breathe, or even just one line that stayed with you, please take a moment to like this video. It lets YouTube know this is worth sharing, and it helps this circle of wisdom grow. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, so you'll know when a new teaching arrives. Until then, may you walk gently, live fully, and remember, the home you've been seeking has always been right here.